Hello and welcome to the fifth in this series of Django podcasts called Django from the Ground Up. In this episode, we'll be working with the Forms library and we'll be adding the ability to create new events. Everything you see here is available already. The source code, the complete source code is available online, and actually a fully working site is available at startthedark.com, which will be what we'll get to at the end of all of this. If you scroll to the bottom on startthedark.com, click on open source, it should have links to everything you'll need. We've got a lot of stuff to cover in this episode, so let's get going. So I think we're going to take the same approach as we did last time, where we started with the URLs. And in this case, we're going to create a URL called create. So it doesn't really matter whether we put that before or afterwards, but we just need to put it somewhere in this file. And let me just type that out right now. Make sure that we're using raw strings so that we don't accidentally make any weird regexes. So we'll be create, and we will end it right there. Views.create. Name will be ev create. And make sure to put a trailing comma, which I usually forget. Okay. The next thing we'll do is def create request. And right now we're just going to put a pass, because first of all, we need to create a different file where we can put all of our forms. So if we go to events, we'll see that there is no forms.py yet, which is where I'd like to put all of our forms stuff. Even though there probably won't be all that much, there's only really one thing we want to do, and that's create a new event. Still, we should probably keep it separated. So then we can go back, and we want to look at our new forms file. Since there's nothing there, we've got a blank slate to do whatever we want. So from Django, import forms. And then we're going to do class event form forms.modelForm. Now, model forms work with models, Django models. It automatically creates a form based on the fields in a model. So we would probably want to import a model as well. From events.models, import event. And then here we are going to do class meta, and this is where we tell the model form where it should get its form from. So we'll do model equals event. And then we can either include or exclude fields. And in this case, there's really only one field we want, which is the description field. So we're going to say fields equal description. So that means that only the description field is going to have an analog created in the form field. The other thing I want to do is right now, if we look back at our models file, our description can be an arbitrary length of characters, but I don't really want that. I want to validate that the actual field itself doesn't get more than 140 characters. So what I'll do is add that right here. I just copied and pasted that from another file, but we're basically resetting the description up here and saying it equals forms.char field with a max length of 140, but that we use a text area instead. One reason you might want to do this is if your app is going to be a reusable app, you might not want to limit it here, but you want to leave it up to whoever is using their own forms to put whatever length on the field that they want. In this case, we're going to do 140, or actually, let's bump that up. Let's say, since we're using a text area, let's say that there's going to be 340. Okay, so now in our views, we probably want to import that. We'll do from events.forms import event form. And now we can use that in any one of our view objects. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's populate the form with, in the constructor, we can do it several different ways. One way to do it is to check whether the request is a post request or if it's a get request, and do it based on that. But a sort of a shorthand is to do request.post or none. Now this doesn't 100% match up, but for most of the time that will work, and I like that. So then we check to see if the form is valid. If the form.is valid, meaning does it have something in that field and is it under the character length that we've specified. Then we can do event equals form.save. And we want to make sure we hit commit equals false. Otherwise, it's going to fail because we have not yet set who the creator is, which is not set to null or blank, so it's going to need to be created with a creator. So we commit false, which means it won't save it to the database. And then we'll say event.creator equals request.user. Okay, so then one of the things that we had mentioned before is that we wanted to guess the date based on things inside of the description. Now, I have a very, very, very rudimentary way of doing this right now. And what that is I'm going to do forward in event.description.split. So we're going to split on every space in the description. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try guest date equals parse word. And in 1 second, you will see where that parse comes from. And then if we find it, let's just break. Else, or except, and let's see what that will accept. That should accept a value error. And we're just going to pass because it's probably going to make that exception a lot. Actually, not pass, we're going to continue. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set event.startDate equal to the guest date. And one thing I need to make sure that I do is before we start even doing this loop, I'm going to make a guest date equals none, so that if it ends up that none of these words in the description have any sort of date, we just assign none to that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and do an event.save, which should save it to the database. Now, there is a couple of things that we need to do so that we can make this work. And actually, one thing that needs to be done is that we import from dateutil.parser import parse. This is probably the only, I think the only external requirement besides the database layer that you'll need for this project. And if you don't want to use that, you can just simply comment out this particular portion of code as well as the import up at the top. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so now we know how we can save our object given a form that's populated. The next thing we want to do is add a message to the user saying that the event was posted. So request.user.messageSet.create message equals your event was posted. Very simple. And then what we want to do is redirect the user to another URL. So what we'll do here is if next in request.post. So if somewhere in the post value they have a next, we're going to say next equals request.post next. Otherwise, next is going to be the URL that we specified before in EV tonight, which if you look in our URLs, it will be tonight, and we've linked to that from event, so it'll be /event/tonight. Now, we actually need to import that reverse URL resolver. So that resolver is at from django.core.url resolvers import reverse. And so then we can do return HTTP response redirect next. And again, we got to go up and import from django.http import HTTP response redirect. So that's if the form is valid. But what if the form is not valid? If the form isn't valid, then .isValid will return false and we'll skip that entire conditional. So what we want to do in that case is render a page where a form is displayed for submission. So return render to response. And if you remember from before, what that means is it first takes in a template, and we'll call it create.html. Oops, got to make sure we put a comma here. Then it's going to take in some context. So what we'll have is form, and we'll just pass in the form that failed or never got validated. And then we'll put context instance equals request context request. Fairly simple right there. So now all we have to do is go into our templates directory and create a create template, if that made any sense. So we will go to templates, events, and we're going to do a very similar thing to before. We're going to do extends base.html. We're going to say block title. And if we remember from before in tonight, we've got this cool little trick for working with our block tag, block.super. Only we don't want to call it tonight, we want to call it create. And then we want block main content. And we'll end that block. There's a really cool method for creating a form programmatically. It's sort of a shortcut, and we'll actually do the long cut later, but for now, if we do form.asUL, it will spit that form out as a list of li elements. So we'll need to enclose that within a UL, because, like I say, it will come out as li's. Oops. It's hard to say one thing and type the other thing. Okay, and then around that, we actually need to create the form. So form method equals post. Action equals right here. We want to post right back to the same URL. And then what we want is we want a submission button. So input type equals submit. Value equals create event. And then we will finish out our form. And let's make sure that this is actually a tree. It's just a personal style preference there. And there we go. So we've got a create form completely specified. Let's start up our server and make sure it works. So if we open up this script, if we go to events and then create, it shows a description field. And if we say hello world from the form, it says hello world from the form because that's our newest event. If we go into the admin, if we go into the admin interface, we see that under events, hello world from the form is the newest one. It looks like it didn't find a start date, but that makes sense because we didn't actually put any dates in that form. And so we are ready, set to go. So that's it for this screencast. I hope that you enjoyed it. We will have more screencasts very soon. Thank you.